Welcome class 11. Here I am going to begin with you chapter 2nd. We are not afraid to die if we can all be together by Gordon Cook and Ellen East. The chapter revolves around a part of round the world voyage undertaken by the narrator and his family in the wave walker called ship. It describes their thrilling journey across the sea and their close encounter with death during their voyage. The plot talks about their possible attempts to save their lives. In the first part of the story, you will come to know how the narrator and his family they started their voyage. So see this one. In July 1976, my wife Mary, son Jonathan 6, daughter Suzanne 7, and I said sailed from Plymouth, England to duplicate the round the world voyage made 200 years earlier by Captain James Cook. So here the writer give the detail that how in July 1976 he along with his family, his wife Mary, 6-year-old son Jonathan and 7-year-old daughter Suzanne, they started their sea voyage from Plymouth, England. For the longest time, Mary and I, a 37-year-old businessman, had dreamt of sailing in the wake of the famous explorer. And for the past 16 years, we had spent all our leisure time honing our seafaring skills. Honing, that means to sharpen your skills. So here, the narrator told he and his wife had spent 16 years around preparing for this round the world voyage and improving their marine skills before going to start this adventure. Boat Wave Walker, a 23-meter 30-ton wooden hulled beauty, had been professionally built, and we had spent months fitting it out and testing it in the roughest weather we could find. So here the narrator tells that their wave walker, their boat, it was 23-meter long, 30-ton heavy, and it was professionally built for such long voyage, and they had tested it in the roughest weather they could ever find. The first leg of our planned 3-year, 105,000-kilometer journey passed pleasantly as we sailed down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. There, before heading east, we took on 2 crewmen, American Larry Vigil and Swiss Herb Sagler, to help us tackle one of the world's roughest sea, the Southern Indian Ocean. Here, the narrator informs that the first part of the planned 3-year, this journey, it passed pleasantly when they sailed down the west coast of Africa till Cape Town. Then they had to keep 2 crew members, staff, the American Larry Vigil and the Swiss Herb Sagler, before heading east from Cape Town to help them to tackle the further journey. So that was the world's roughest sea, so which was approaching in their way. So before entering into the Southern Indian Ocean, so they have to now hire the 2 crew members. So let's know what's happened next. In the further part, now you will come to know that how the hurdles will begin now during the voyage. So see now. On our second day of Cape Town, we began to encounter the strong gales. Gales means strong winds. For the next few weeks, they blew continuously. Gales didn't worry me, but the size of the waves was alarming, up to 15 meters, as high as our main mast. December 25 found us 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. Despite atrocious weather, atrocious that means worst weather, we had a wonderful holiday complete with a Christmas tree. New Year's Day saw no improvement in the weather, but we reasoned that it had to change soon, and it did change, but for the worse. So see now what happened. So on the second day, out of the Cape Town when they entered in the southern Indian Ocean. So they were now encountered with the strong winds and the high waves. Till New Year, they found no change in the weather. They start hoping the things will get settled soon. There came the change, but not for the good. But the things get more worsened with the passing of the time. In the morning of 2nd January, they found the waves turned to be of very gigantic size. They were sailing with storm jib now, but still they were covering the voyage with the good speed. But the moment when the boat moved to the top of each wave, they found the enormous size, sea, and the dangerous wind continued to terrorize their ears. To slow the boat, to slow the boat down, we dropped the storm jib and lashed a heavy mooring rope in a loop across the stern. Last means to fasten something. Mooring means the thing which is used for tying the boat to a fixed object. Stern, that is the back part of the ship. So then we double-lasted everything, went through our life raft drills, attached lifelines, donned oilskins and life jackets and waited. So lifelines here stands for the ropes which are fixed around the bodies of persons to prevent from drowning. And life raft drills, that means to do the practice of the safety measurements. Oilskins, so this means waterproof clothings. Life jackets, again the life supporting jackets and clothes. So here the narrator explains what preparation did they make to minimize the damage from the coming disaster. So to minimize the damage, they dropped the storm jib and lashed a heavy rope in a loop across the stern. Then they fastened everything and went through their life raft drill, attached lifelines and put on oilskins and life jackets and prepared themselves for the worst conditions. So in this way, he made all the preparation and took the help of life supporting skills and everything to face the coming danger. First indication of impending disaster came at about 6 p.m. with an ominous silence. Impending means approaching. Ominous silence, that is the complete stillness. That is not the sign of something good. The wind dropped and the sky immediately grew dark. Then came a growing roar and an enormous cloud towered aft of the ship. With horror, I realized that it was not a cloud but a wave like no other I had ever seen. It appeared perfectly vertical and almost twice the height of the other waves with a frightful breaking crest. Here the narrator explains the first indication of their approaching disaster. It came around 6 in the evening with a complete silence in the sea. The wind stopped suddenly and the sky immediately grew to be dark. Then a loud roaring was heard. The narrator thought he saw a cloud coming towards them. But with horror, he realized that it was not a cloud but the biggest wave that he had never seen in his life. It appeared to be in the vertical shape and double the height of the other waves. The roar increased to a thunder as the stern moved up the face of the wave, and for a moment I thought we might ride over it. But then a tremendous explosion shook the deck. A torrent of green and white water broke over the ship. My head smashed into the wheel, and I was aware of flying overboard and sinking below the waves. I accepted my approaching death, and as I was losing consciousness, I felt quite peaceful. So here He explains further that when the wave hit their boat, there was the sound of tremendous explosion over the deck. The water it now poured into their boat. The narrator's head it was smashed against the steering wheel of the boat, and before he came to know, he was flying overboard. Overboard means into the sea, and found himself sinking below the waves. Now he was sure about his coming death and started losing his senses. So there came the feeling of peacefulness when he started now losing his consciousness. Unexpectedly, my head popped out of the water a few meters away. Wave Walker was near capsizing. Her mast almost horizontal. Then a wave hurled her upright. My lifeline jerked taut. I grabbed the guardrails and sailed through the air into the wave walker's main boom. Subsequent waves tossed me around the deck like a rag doll. My left ribs cracked, my mouth filled with blood and broken teeth. Somehow I found the wheel, lined up the stern for the next wave, and hung on. Capsizing means overturn, and the boom it is a long pole to which the bottom. Capsizing means overturn, hurled that means to throw violently, and boom is the long pole to which the bottom of the sail is attached. So here, as the narrator is expecting about his coming death, he said very surprisingly, he found the next moment his head popped out of the water, and he also saw that his wave walker it had almost capsized nearby. But suddenly a wave came and hurled it upright, and the narrator was also tossed back into his boat. But he found his left ribs were cracked, his mouth was filled with blood, and some teeth were broken. But somehow he managed to find the wheel and lined up the stern for the next wave and hung on there. Water, water everywhere. I could feel that ship had water below, but I dared not abandon the wheel to investigate. So here the narrator explained he knew very well that the boat was flooding with water, but he did not have the courage to leave the wheel to investigate. Suddenly, the front hatch was thrown open. Hatch is the door in the deck of a ship. And Mary appeared. "We are sinking," she screamed. "The decks are smashed. We are full of water." Suddenly, the front hatch was opened and the Mary appeared and informed that the boat was sinking as the water was pouring in now. He "Take the wheel," I shouted as I scrambled for the hatch. Scramble, that means to run. Here the narrator handed the wheel to Mary and went for the investigation. Larry and her were pumping like madmen. So he found his crew members. They were now pumping out the water like madmen from the ship. Broken timbers hung at crazy angles. The whole starboard side burst inwards. Clothes, crockery, charts, tins, and toys sloshed about in deep water. Starboard is the right side of the ship. Burst means to stick out in a round shape. Slashed means to move. So narrator observed that the wooden beams of the ship had broken at the critical angles. The whole starboard side had burst. He found that clothes, crockery, charts, tins, and toys, they were all moving noisily over the deck. I half swam, half crawled into the children's cabin. "Are you all right?" I asked. "Yes," they answered from the upper bunk. Upper bunk, that is the sleeping berth. When he inquired about the well-being of the children were all right, but the Sue, she complained of some head injury. the narrator had to ignore as he had to think for the safety of all on the ship. After finding hammer, screws, and canvas, I struggled back on deck. With the starboard side burst open, we were taking water with each wave that broke over us. As the narrator had seen, the right side of the ship was hit hard, so he had to think about repairing of it. If I could not make some repairs, we would surely sink. So he knew it, that if timely he won't repair it, surely the whole ship would sink. More problems arose when our hand pumps started to block up the debris floating around the cabins and the electric pump short circuited. The water level rose threateningly. Back on deck, I found that our two spare hand pumps had been wrenched overboard, along with the forestay sail, the jib, the dinges, and the main anchor. Deflected means to move away. Deflected means to move the direction. Here the narrator informs that somehow he was able to repair the gaping holes by stretching the canvas and providing the waterproof hatch. More problems arose when our hand pump started to block up with the debris floating around the cabins and the electric pump short circuited. The water levels rose threateningly. Back on the deck, I found that our two spare hand pumps had been wrenched overboard, along with the forestay sail, the jib, the dinges, and the main anchor. Wrench means to pull apart. Dinges, these are the small boats. So here he explains that their trouble it increased more with the jamming of the debris. Debris, these are all the garbage which was created due to the damage caused by the torrent wind. So here he explains the hand pumps they started now jamming with the trash which was floating around the cabin, and soon their electric pump got short circuited and the water level rose threateningly. He found that their two spare hand pumps had been pulled away by the currents along with the forestay, sail, the jib, the lifeboats, and the main anchor. Narrator was shocked to see all the two extra hand pumps they had been pulled apart, along with the forestay sail, the jib, the dinges, and the main anchor of the ship. So he had no way to now save his life. Then I remembered we had another electric pump under the chatroom floor. I connected it to an out pipe and was thankful to find that it worked. So suddenly remembered that they had one more electric pump in the chatroom floor. Chatroom is the room where the maps are kept in the ship. I connected it to an out pipe. So he connected this pump to the drainage pipe and was thankful to find it worked. So he was very happy to find that it was working. The night dragged on with the endless, bitterly cold routine of pumping, steering, and working the radio. We were getting no replies to our Mayday calls, which was not surprising in this remote corner of the world. Mayday calls means the distress messages over the radio. So here the narrator explained that how that night extended, which was full of endless, bitter, cold routine of pumping, steering, and working with the radio. However, there was no response even of their Mayday calls. Mayday calls means the distress messages given over the radio, which was not surprising in this remote corner of the world. He knew it very well that there is no connectivity in this remote area of the world. Sue's head had swollen alarmingly, shockingly. She had two enormous black eyes, and now she showed us a deep cut on her arm. So now the narrator found the head of the girl. It was swollen alarmingly, and she had two black eyes and the deep cut on her arm. That means her now black eyes were swollen, now very shockingly, due to the effect of the injury of her head. When I asked why she had not made more of her injuries before this, she replies I didn't want to worry you when you were trying to save us all. But the girl replied very simply that why she did not complain and cry for her injuries. When the father asked why she had not cried before this about her injuries, she replied very innocently, Father, I don't want to give you worry, as you were trying to save the life of all. So that's why I didn't complain and cry for my injuries.